You've already shared or touched on a little bit. Are there any specific stories around the product, around the development of the product, the idea behind the product, the branding of the product that you feel like that people
how they came up with the mash?
Well, Willie said we need to make a rye whiskey, right?
Okay.
That's kind of what he wanted. That's one of the things he really wanted. And you got to name it after something.
Sure.
Right? You can't just say rye whiskey. You can. I guess that's the name. But yeah, they're just going with the themes of what's local and what's around Ennis, and the tobacco roots was the perfect theme. I think the name works really well. Tobacco Root Rye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's a great name. It fits it. It's,
Do you guys all get together to name something? Or
no,
is
it's generally the managing crew,
Okay.
sales crew. Those are sales questions that you need to ask yourself. What's your product line going to be named? And so you ask the experts, and that's the salespeople.
Yeah.
Is that a typical mash bill of the amounts of?
I imagine, you can change it up a little bit, put a little bit of wheat in there, but I think, I'm not exactly sure on the rules. I didn't look up the rules of rye, but I'm pretty sure you'd have to have like a 51% rye in order to call it a rye. But it classifies as a whiskey, so it has to follow the whiskey rules. So the grains, spirits made from grains, fermented grains. And then, if you want to call it a rye, you should probably put the majority of a rye in there, right? But I'm sure there are other companies out there who are using wheat or oats or barley, more barley than what we use. Yeah. And still calling it a rye. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, one of the things that we talked about at some length with the Stockman's Rye back in September, I think it was its connection of the whole. It's like a hat tip to the Prohibition era,
right?
So, just out of curiosity, was there a specific? Does this one kind of fall in the same line of that same kind of hat tip, or was it specifically just the Stockman's Rye that you decided to do that for, and why?
So I think that was more of a specific to Stockman's, and Stockman's is rye, this whiskey with Canadian, kind of like similar along the lines of the Devil's Brigade is American bourbon with Canadian. So that blend, I think they specifically wanted to do the Prohibition kind of thing, and the Montana history behind Prohibition. And at one point, Montana was the largest importer of Canadian spirits. So during Prohibition, Montana was also the first state to go dry. It was also the first state to go wet.
So it went dry in 1916. Prohibition wasn't until 1918.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it was like 24 or 26, and then Prohibition was repealed in 28.
I think 33.
33. Yeah. So Montana became one of the first states to just stop enforcing Prohibition.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of at the governor level, basically telling all the sheriffs, don't do Prohibition. We don't care. We're done. We're over this. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting in the little bit of research that I did was I didn't appreciate that the state of Montana, it wasn't until I think like 2000 that legislation was passed that allowed craft distilleries to even operate in the first place.
Right.
So things shut down, so the rye market, because that was the predominant drink, kind of in that Prohibition era, like you're discussing. And then, and then when it came back online, so to speak, after the end of Prohibition, the whole industry shifted towards bourbon. I don't know why. Do you know why?
Probably had a lot to do with what they could get their hands on. Corn was probably really cheap.
Okay.
Yeah. You look at kind of where things came, like the history of spirits in general. Scotland makes Scotch because they have peat and they needed something to dry out their barley and properly kiln it. And then they made Scotch. And then, several hundred years of making Scotch, and all of a sudden now they have a regional thing, right? Because they use peat to smoke their grains in the kilning and malting process, and that created Scotch. And it's because it's what they had. Literally because they had peat. They had lots of it. Not
That's
a whole
where the
lot.
smoky flavor comes from
Right.
in that Scotch.
Right. Not a whole lot of forest to cut down in Scotland.
Right.